Right, traders. So if you got hit with the email, I think pretty much everyone with Apex did. We got a link to this page, potential program changes, community vote, and survey. And there's no survey on there yet, but it does say more videos will be added to the page. So please check back over the next week. And down at the bottom, it actually says more videos and the survey link coming soon. So as you can see, 58 minutes, 56 minutes, an hour and 36 minutes, 44 minutes are the length of these videos. So a little over 4 hours of discussion. And I am basically going to give you the cliff notes so that you don't have to sit through this. For that, I ask that you simply hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. I do giveaways the first Friday morning every single month with the proceeds, or with a percentage of the proceeds that I get from my affiliation fees, as a way to give back to you guys for using my code with Apex, which is code VALA. I appreciate all the support you've done as far as signing up with my code. So let's get into this. The first video is talking about the potential program changes, and I'm just going to fly through these. So he basically talks about the possible changes that we could have, and here's all the key ones. So he talked about possibly having daily payments processed instead of doing the 2 pay periods. So possibly taking away the request dates of the 1st through the 5th and the 15th through the 20th. And once you have 10 days traded, you're able to request a payout. Obviously, these aren't things that have happened. They're just potential changes that he said are going to be on the survey. He was talking about, what about changing from 10 days to 8? Let the users vote on how to handle the people that are taking advantage of the system. Possibly get rid of the flipping rule and the 30% rule. Instead of 30% with a gray area, like saying if it's 31%, are we really going to deny a payout? Etc. What if they just made it a 40% rule, black and white? So if you go over 40%, you get denied. If you stay under 40%, you're within that rule. Possibly reduce the time until max withdrawal. He went through a bunch of different scenarios. It was kind of confusing, but basically he's saying if they find that you're consistent, you can essentially reduce that time it would take to get to max withdrawal, not necessarily having one payout per month for 3 months like it is now. So I don't know, that would require some further explaining by them. Maybe from 7 to 5 days for eval passes when there's not the 1-day pass active. And then pretty much for 30 minutes in a row, they basically just talked about all the drama that kind of went on and how they were tired of it. But then he got into how they've expanded their staff and how they're looking for their staff to be being used in the correct way by cracking down and enforcing the rules to weed out the bad apples. They talked a lot about people bashing Apex, which essentially were the schemers and the scammers. And they're perfectly okay with the bad apples being bad apples. And because by enforcing the rules, they should eventually leave Apex because they can't take advantage of their system anymore. Their prop firm. So I always call it a system, but they are a prop firm. So, and then he basically said that the survey will come out at a later time or date, as you saw on the website, which leads us into the second video, scams and schemes. So in part 1, he basically was describing how the staff was tied up dealing with all of this instead of bettering Apex and also answering legit tickets that are put in for legit problems, but instead trying to talk to the schemers and scammers, explaining why they aren't getting paid, et cetera, et cetera. They have new teams in place, a new fraud team, a new payout team, a new tech team, and just lots of new staff in general trying to keep up with stuff. But he said even with all these new people, they're still having trouble keeping up. Some of the things that the schemers and scammers were getting away with this is where he started bringing up these things. Apparently there was a lot of same location trading, copying trading on other accounts or services. So apparently what I found throughout most of this is that there's a lot of bigger fish out there than what we thought. There was a lot of services out there that were essentially offering to trade for you. There was services out there allowing you to essentially copy their accounts, and we'll kind of get into that a bit more because there's more about that going forward. There was people trading from banned countries, using fake IDs, using stolen credit cards. They were opening accounts under families' members' names. They were paying others to pass just the evals for them and then handing it back to them with the PAs. Basically, it was just a lot, a lot of misuse and things that I myself would have never even thought of. And these are things that they were dealing with on a daily basis. They are trying to combat the spam in the comments, scam emails, etc. Apparently, they don't like to keep the comments on because it just leads to a bunch of useless stuff as far as like the scams that people are promoting, like the hey, if I trade your accounts, I can make X amount of money for you, yada yada yada, like those kinds of spam, not spam as in just people spamming random comments. So he then gets into dollar cost averaging, talking about how it works until it doesn't. And one of the big problems was people were using the accounts as a stop. They also were claiming that DCA is only for long-term investing and not day trading. I mean, I'm not going to get into that now, but I don't necessarily totally agree with that. And apparently, what really set them off was if you go back and look at the chart on April 18th, there was a really big down day. And apparently, this caused a lot of these big scam scheme accounts that were dollar cost averaging with tons of cushion on the account absolutely got slaughtered. And so apparently, he was looking at all the accounts that he could potentially move to live accounts because they were doing so well. And on April 18th, he made it sound like 9, 10 of these huge accounts. One of them was like $1.2 million in possible payouts, all the way down to like 200,000 in payouts. They all just vanished. And it was because they just kept dollar cost averaging with no stop in mind on this day of April 18th. And the market just never rebounded and it just kept going down and down. And basically, that's kind of what set off all the alarm bells to start looking into all this and dollar cost averaging in general. They're assuming that a lot of it was just bots with no stop losses that were just taking these trades, etc. So this Quantower copy trader, I know a lot of people have heard of this. I know there's some YouTubers that use it, that promote it, etc. Well, apparently they have a stealth mode that allows you to connect to like a main account from your account. So you can essentially buy accounts and then connect them to someone else so that when they're trading, it's essentially copying their trades. And on top of that, the people that were doing this knew what they were doing. They were contacting Replicanto and saying, hey, is there any way that Apex can find out that I'm doing this? And in their response, which he shows an example of the response, saying, yes, all you have to do is delete XYZ before sending it into Apex. And I mean, right there, that's enough for me to say I will never deal with Replicanto. I've never looked into them because I've never really copy traded too much anyway. I've never had an issue with the one that comes with Quantower that I use. So I simply, I mean, that's fraud. I mean, they were straight up telling them how to get around telling them what to do. So, anyways, they then get into talking about that they weren't catching the DCA scams before April 18th because they just didn't have the staff to do so. And basically, he was getting into what if they had sent them to live? Like, what if April 18th didn't happen and he did take or put all these accounts into a live account? Like, how much real money would they have lost if April 18th happened after they put them all on live accounts? So pretty scary to think about when you think of it from that perspective. They talk about how the staff has been busy with all the nonsense instead of doing what they need to be concentrating on. And then they close with about how he needs our help to combat this all moving forward. Again, kind of talking about that survey, etc. Which then leads us into part two. They talk about the importance of having a true system: entries, targets, stops, trails, backtesting, etc. Then he gets into talking about some more of like the scam schemes, and he gets into like some people would talk about burn one to earn one, which was windfall / gambling, where people would basically take 2 PA accounts and just go the opposite way at, say, the open or a news event or earnings or whatever would make the market move a lot, and basically just get that windfall trade and then flip the rest of the days moving forward trying to get those payouts. He showed several examples of this where people would make 10 to 20K on the first day of a PA and then just flip the rest of the days. And then when they started getting found out that they were doing that, they started like testing the system. Like, could we just wait 3 or 4 days and then do it? Or could we wait to the last day and then do it? And eventually they started to see all these and were denying the ones that were obviously breaking the rules. So the contract size consistency was never a hard set rule, even though it kind of sounds like it. But that was basically to combat the windfall traders as well. The ones that were taking, say, the max 10 contracts on a 50K, having that windfall trade, and then just going down to one contract and flipping for the remainder of the time, trying to get that payout. I can't believe people were actually doing this. I didn't even think that they would pay something out like that, because I thought that would be pretty obvious to see on their side, which it actually is. He shows examples of the charts that they can see. I mean, again, I kind of believe him when it comes to the aspect of maybe they just didn't have the manpower to really look individually at each of these accounts. But is that, I mean, that's kind of on them, but whatever. I'm not going to dive deeper into that. I'm just going to stay on point with the cliff notes here. So the PA contract, or real quick with the contract size, it was basically just saying, if one day you see a great setup, you can use more contracts. If there's a day where you're not feeling it, you can use less contracts. It's not saying like if you trade 3 contracts that first day of the PA account, you have to trade 3 contracts every single time from there on. It's not saying that. He wanted to make sure that that's not what they meant by that. It's more so to prevent, again, the windfall going from 10 and then 1 like the rest of the time. The PA contract non-disclosure is in place to prevent working with people scamming and taking advantage of Apex, which kind of reverted back to basically them saying the more we deny these people, hopefully they'll go away and they can concentrate more on the people that actually are consistent and following the rules. They're again talking about the windfall traders, and how they do this is because they don't, or why they do this is because they don't actually know how to trade. So this is their only way of making it to payout. So that's what they do. So he did lump news trading, breakout trading, the morning opening trade, bracket trades both ways into one. It sounded like he was lumping that all into one, saying that they're all prohibited. But I think he's really and I say I have no proof yet, but I believe he's saying you simply can't trade these with the bracket orders on both sides. So if you're trading and you have key levels and you have a bias on which way the market's going, I think that is perfectly fine. I think what they're trying to combat here is just placing an order to go long and placing an order to go short randomly, and not knowing or having a bias at all on which way the market's going to go, and essentially trying to profit off of that. So I'm pretty sure that's what they're trying to combat. And I think, like, I still trade the open. I'm pretty sure that's going to be perfectly fine as long as you are doing it with a purpose and you can have a system. Like, you could purposely explain to them how you came up with this trade idea, why you took the trade, why you got out, etc. Right? So that's kind of what they're looking for, I believe. But the way that he made it sound is that you can't. So I don't know. That's just going to have to be a wait and see kind of thing. Going into risk management is why a lot of people were freaking out. They were basically saying with the whole 1 to 3 stop, which kind of went to a 1 to 4 stop, etc. That was more so basically, again, just talking about how people were using the accounts as the stop. And this next statistic really blew me away. He was showing an Excel sheet, and some people had 29 backup eval accounts. So like they had 20 PA accounts with 29 backup eval accounts. But then he went to the next slide, and there was an account that had 20 PA accounts, but they had 277 eval accounts sitting there, like live eval accounts. That is insane at 277. Like, obviously they were scheming and scamming. So basically the idea behind that was they blow one of the PA accounts because they're using them as the stop, that they had all these just locked and loaded essentially. One thing that he said that really stuck with me is that these scammers are deploying withdrawal strategies, not consistent trading strategies. And that was actually, that was like the one thing I really took from this entire thing that he said, that I was like, wow, that was actually a nugget of knowledge there. That within these prop firms, are you deploying a withdrawal strategy, or are you deploying a consistent trading strategy? And I do think there's a gray area in there, even as a trader, because early on, to kind of prove yourself, I feel like you're going to want to take those payouts. So it might feel like you're just trying to get to payout and withdraw, but is it with a consistent trading strategy? That's kind of how I would look at it, and that's kind of how I am looking at it moving forward. Was using the account as the stop right? No. Was it working? Yes. Was it necessarily hard coded into the rules? It was a gray area, but now it's not. So that's one of those things where as long as moving forward, you have a consistent trading strategy, you should be perfectly fine. So by only trying to get to payouts and not building a cushion, it actually prevents Apex from ever getting a cut after that 25K. So if you don't know, I'm going to tell you, 25K on each account that you open is yours, 100% of it. After 25K, it becomes a 90-10 split, which isn't even that bad. You get 90%, they get 10%. But the way that people were trading these accounts, no one is ever getting to the point where they're taking 25K out of an account. So they're basically giving you 100% of all the payouts you get and never getting a cut because no one's ever getting to that 25K payout amount. So they talk about a scheme that he was actually impressed by, even though it breaks all the rules. And he kind of goes on this long rant, but it was basically people using the accounts as the stop loss, but only going for 5 ticks at a time. And he explains how that you're going to win 95% of the time. And if you only use one contract, you can just hit 5 ticks, 5 ticks, 5 ticks, 5 ticks. And you still would have like 500 ticks of cushion with one, if you only use one contract, for that to go against you before you hit that $25 max drawdown on a 50K account. So he was essentially saying that you can't do that because, like, what if it goes 499 ticks against you, comes all the way back, and you take 5 ticks profit? It's just completely against what they're. And again, they put the 1 to 3, 1 to 4 stop loss ordeal in there, so you can't do this moving forward anyway. But that was one of the biggest scams, and that he was, talking about. Like, they were taking millions out doing this. So. And then they got back into how this isn't even the half of it, and the staff are too busy wasting time with the schemes and scams, and how they shouldn't be doing anything. How they should be focused on the more important things like the consistent traders, etc. And until it gets cleaned up, there's not much they can do about it. Which leads us into our last video, the Apex contract enforcement. At the very beginning, he says the contract is the governing object of the relationship and explains the do's and don'ts. And that was a great lead into this video, but then it's literally just 22 minutes of analogies just explaining essentially why rules are rules and why you have to follow them. And then once the analogies are over, it's like the last 15 minutes or so, he basically gets into, if you want to trade outside of the contract, you could open your own account and do whatever you want, essentially. They're not looking, and then he, gets into the fact of they're not looking for ways to deny people with the contract. And he knows that there's a difference in the letter of the contract versus the spirit of the contract. But the letter of the contract is there to help combat all the schemes and the scams, etc. And they're basically looking for people with multiple breaches of contract or the obvious intentional breaches. And he straight up says Apex have no obligation to contractors who breach the contract, and Apex has the right to remove any account at all whenever they want if you breach the contract or if they want to remove a balance. And the last thing they had said is that on some of these occasions, if you breach the contract, but it looks like maybe it was a one-off and you didn't really necessarily mean to do it, they might give you a second chance to prove yourself. And if they offer that, they essentially make you do the 10 trading days again, and they will leave the money in there from the previous 10 days, but they want to see you get back within the confines of the contract and trade the next 10 days according to that. So that was summing up essentially 4+ hours of what he had out there. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I may have missed a couple things that he said in there, but I feel like these were the main points. Again, if you want to see some of the screenshots, you can probably kind of file through. I know I was posting some in the Discord as well, so you could always come find them in there. Links down in the description as far as the screenshots go that I was talking about. But that's all I have. Again, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Appreciate the support. Code VALA if you are using an Apex account. And don't forget about the giveaway where I do give away 5% every single month. First Friday morning live stream every single month. And that's all I got for you. Until the next one. Peace.